Register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Friday, May 29th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. So many things have happened and transpired in the last 24 hours. I will give you a rundown and then we will discuss each of them. The 3rd precinct in Minneapolis has been completely burned down. It was overrun. Police officers evacuated. They were ordered to leave. And they left. And overnight, it was just a continuation of outrage from protesters, some looters, and whatever the case may be. We went over that yesterday. I don't really care about the looting. I'm not concerned about the personal property of corporations during this time, not when there is zero concern or regard for the lives of black people at the hands of police officers. That's number one. That happened last night. Overnight, the state police, as in addition to Donald Trump ordering the National Guard in, well, Donald Trump requesting on Twitter that the National Guard go in. Well, that's not even right either. Donald Trump essentially saying that he was going to send in the National Guard, and if necessary, they will start shooting looters. That's what happened overnight. And I'll go over those tweets in detail. But the state troopers, along with state police, showed up and dispersed the crowds. This morning, a CNN reporter, a black CNN and a black Latinx CNN reporter was arrested live on air. He and his entire crew were arrested, but not the white CNN journalist that was there with him. And so we'll go over that. He has since been released, but the officer said that they were acting under orders. So the big question is who sent those orders? It has been an eventful 24 hours. And I mean, well, folks, there's so many layers to the problems that are going on. Everything from the fact that this police officer, Chauvin, apparently knew George Floyd well. According to the councilwoman there, I will play that audio. And then Amy Klobuchar failing to prosecute this man for a previous murder, for a previous police shooting. That's going on. The absenteeism of the Democratic leadership, that's happening in real time. And the Republican right-wing conservative outrage machine coalescing around the suppression of these protesters, that is to be expected, but it still must be discussed. So that's kind of a rundown of everything that's happening in the world, in the small corner of our world today. But I have serious concerns about this government. And I know that's an understatement, but allow me to expound on it. I have serious concerns because what Donald Trump is showing the ugly face of is the reality of what has consistently always been the case in this country, at least all of my lifetime, and some would argue throughout the entirety of this country, that we ourselves have been occupied by a tyrannical regime that uses the brute force of the police state to keep us under subjection on behalf of the ruling elite. In other words, the government is not here to serve us. It is here to serve the ruling elite. It is here to keep us in check. And the irony of it is that you had right-wing Republicans who pretend as though they want to fight against the tyrannical government, right? But in reality, they're just cosplaying at this point. They're just dressing up. They're just out there pretending as though they have something to actually be aggrieved over, when in reality, they are part and parcel with the ruling class of this country, except they just don't have the ruling dollars, right? They are subservient to the ruling elite for ideological reasons, not economic reasons. But I digress. The truth of the matter is that this country is occupied by a failed regime. And the conversation that has to be had, and I'll have it for patrons only. If you want to turn me in to the police, you're going to have to at least pay money up front to do so, is the fact that we have the right of revolution. It's written right there in our founding documents. When a government fails to provide for us the opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in fact, when they begin to oppress those very rights, we have the right of revolution. And yet that is a conversation that we tiptoe around all of the time. It would be different. It would be different if they were just happy enough No, you know what? I'm going to save that conversation. Let's start off with the madman in chief, the white supremacist in chief in the White House, as he tweets out something that, this is the other thing. Twitter finally started abridging Donald Trump's tweets. Here's the tweet that Twitter finally said, enough's enough. He said on Twitter, this is the first tweet, this one was fine. He said, I can't stand back and watch this happen to a great American city, Minneapolis. A total lack of leadership. Either the very weak radical left mayor, Jacob Frey, get his act together. Yeah, that's exactly how he typed it. Either the very weak radical left mayor, Jacob Frey, get his act together and bring the city under control, or I will send in the National Guard to get the job done. Okay. Provocative, but not a violation of Twitter rules. This next tweet this is what he said. These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let it happen. Just spoke to the governor, Tim Walz, and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. So essentially, the president of the United States is advocating shooting looters, which I'm sure is a war crime in any regular situation, any combat zone. But mind you, we're not in a combat zone. The people are simply protesting and rioting. I don't care what you call it. Like, you're not going to find me mincing words. Riot, protesting, looting, it's all the same at this point when you're dealing with a government that has never intended to deal in good faith with us from the beginning. There's no protest that is acceptable to them. They didn't like us when we bent our knees. They don't like us when we march peacefully. They don't like us when we refuse to. They don't like us when we refuse to go out in the pandemic, right? They're trying to compel us to go out in the pandemic. So there's literally no protest that is acceptable to this government. And yet this government continuously brutalizes, particularly the black community, but all marginalized communities, all impoverished communities come underneath the suffocating blow and the suffocating boot of this tyrannical government, this failed regime. All of us still come underneath the brutish nature of this government. So I don't really care what you call the protest, what the news media calls a protest, what conservatives call the protest. If you call a riot, call it looters. If you're not pleased with it, I don't give a damn, because there's nothing. What you want is total submission. And since you would not hear us when we cried peacefully, you are now hearing us as we tear down your shit. So again, I'm just putting that aside, because a lot of people are still concerned about civility and respectability. They've already demonstrated that they will kill us when we are being the utmost respectful. So the president of the United States here has called for the looters to be shot. Now, the funny thing about this is that he is directly quoting with the correct punctuation and all. So I know he actively researched this. Somebody on his team actively researched this quote, and they took it directly from the racist Alabama governor George Wallace in 1968. He said the same thing. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. And so he's giving a callback completely to, he's standing in solidarity with one of the most racist people in American history. He wants you to know very clearly where he stands on this issue. And the president stands with law and order that is used to oppress one group and serve another group. I think something that I want to highlight here, even though it's not the core message, I want to repeat this. A lot of people fancy the possibility of there being a right-left coalition. One of the reasons I don't think that would ever happen is because the right is not at all dedicated to the idea of the liberation of all people from a tyrannical government. They are committed to the idea of using the force of government to control one group to their own benefit. But if they would ever stop being the bootlicking fascists, the subservient, mindless automatons doing the bidding of the elite, of the ruling elite, then the fact of the matter is that we do have a common cause, and the common cause is a government that is set up and erected to serve a few and to crush the many. My guy Adam Surer over at The Atlantic said it this way. He said, the reason the president threatened mass murder in response to looting is the same reason the police thought they can kill George Floyd on video and get away with it. Some people are protected by the rules and others are simply subject to them. And that is exactly how right-wing conservatives want it. They don't pull their guns because they honestly believe that the federal government is going to infringe on their rights. They pull their guns because they believe that there's a possibility that the government will protect someone else's rights. And that to them is an affront to what they consider their liberty. So that's why I don't think that there will ever be a right-left coalition to fight back against a regime that is clearly unconstitutionally supporting one group at the expense of the masses. They are plundering the American people. The federal government, the current regime, as it stands, is plundering the wealth of this nation on behalf of the ruling elite, and they utilize a police force to brutally suppress opposition. And part of that calculus is the routine maintenance of crushing Black lives. Because where else are you going to get these mad dogs an opportunity to get off of their leash and express all of their pent up rage and all their testosterone driven, white supremacist laced rage, except let them unleash them on the Black community? Because after all, America has a track record of dehumanizing Black people, and therein lies the problem. We have come to the point where we see on full display in 2020 that they still value property over the actual lives of Black people. And the president of the United States did not get involved until some trinkets, some widgets at Target got burned and looted. And now he's not coming in on behalf of human life. He's coming in on behalf of capital, letting it be known that he's willing to use the full force of the federal government to kill anyone who dares undermines the fundamental nature of capitalism in this country. That's what we're dealing with. That's America. And ain't shit changed. It's been this way for a very long time. And it's time for the people to realize that, but also realize that we don't have to put up with this because we have the constitutional right of revolution. I want you to take a listen into this clip of Hennepin County Attorney Freeman as he discusses why it is that none of these police officers have been arrested in the murder, or for the murder, rather, of George Floyd.
It's a violation of my ethics to talk and evaluate evidence before we announce our charging decision, and I will not do that. I will say this, that video is graphic and horrific and terrible, and no person should do that. But my job in the end is to prove that he violated a criminal statute, and there is other evidence that does not support a criminal charge. We need to wade through all of that evidence and to come through with a meaningful determination, and we are doing that to the best of our ability.
Get the hell out of here. I mean, this is absolutely the wrong answer. This is what he said. There is other evidence that refutes the idea that there was something criminal about what happened. There were four men on the back, or three men on the back of this police officer, one with his knee on the neck of this man. And here's the thing. Something else interesting came out last night. I told you this has been the most eventful 12 hours possibly in American history when the whole story is told. Here is the councilwoman, Andrea, I'll catch her last name in a second, but as she lets it be known that this Officer Chauvin, knew the victim, George Floyd.
You know, I think it's really interesting that right across the street from where Allie is standing, is a restaurant called El Nuevo Rodeo. George Floyd worked at that restaurant. So did Officer Chauvin. They were both bouncers at that restaurant for 17 years.
Wow.
So Officer Chauvin he knew George. They were co-workers for a very long time.
Wow. If this turns out, and I have no reason not to believe, that is Councilwoman Andrea Jenkins. And I have no reason not to believe her. But as that pans itself out, like, this is premeditated. And so for the state's attorney to, I mean, let's be real. There's literally no reason for them to not be in custody right now, even if the whole case has not been made. But what they do for cops is they try to make it seem as though they have to get all of the evidence before they can even make an arrest. And that's not how they do it for anybody else in this country. But if this evidence that Councilwoman Andrea Jenkins is mentioning is true, then that means this officer killed this man, first-degree murder. And you wonder, so listen, the imagery itself is enough for people to be enraged. The continuity of police suppression and brutality and murders in the black community is enough for people to be outraged. But for this man to turn around and say, well, there's other evidence. What other evidence, right? How are you prioritizing other evidence versus the evidence that is on the tape and what this councilwoman brought to the table already? What evidence are you bringing to the table to suggest that there's something else that happened? What's actually happening is what has been going on for a very long time in this country, and that is the fact that mayors and city officials, council members, they are held hostage by rogue paramilitary organizations called the police that are completely unanswerable to the people. They are their own gang. That's why they take up more than half the budgets in most cities. They go and do whatever they see fit with impunity, and no one is brave enough to actually hold them accountable. We have a police state in every single city. It's just a question of, have you stepped on the toes of the police officers enough for them to show their fangs? All right, when we come back after the Patron party, we'll discuss the CNN journalist being arrested and so much more.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Here we go. At this point in every single episode, I like to take a minute to show my gratitude to all the people who make this show possible. Very special welcome to William Emerson. Thank you for becoming a patron. Tally Noble, thank you for becoming a patron. Brendan Donnelly, thank you for becoming a patron. Jackie Stimmel, thank you for becoming a patron. And, Queer Mermaids, thank you for becoming a patron. Wallow Jones or Wallowy Jones. Rab, thank you for becoming a patron. Scott Hulina, thank you for becoming a patron. James Gabriel, thank you for becoming a patron. Karen Webster, Timothy Winters, Tatra, Connor Dickerson, and Paige Beckler, thank you for becoming patrons. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get uncut, unfiltered, unedited show, twice the content, exclusive interviews, and none of these advertisements.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
All right, welcome back. I want you to take a listen to this audio, and I want you to listen very carefully, and I want you to hear the controlled calm in the voice of Omar Jimenez. He was, from the very first sound that you hear, you're going to hear him talking. I want you to understand that he is surrounded by police officers. If you see the video, he has two police officers behind him. One officer has his hand on his arm, the arm that he's using to hold the microphone. And then the cameraman panned in front pan the camera around, and you can see like three other police officers with their batons standing in front of him. So he's exercising the utmost level of control and calm in a very intimidating situation that should never have happened in the first place. That's the context. Listen in.
And this is a scene here playing out in Minneapolis. This is part of the advanced police presence that we saw come over the course of really minutes when the local police showed up at the fire department, or with the fire department, I should say, on that building we showed you that was burning. This is among the State Patrol unit that was advancing up the street, saying and scattering the protesters at that point for people to clear the area. And so we walked away. I'm sorry? You're under arrest. Okay. Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest, sir?
Officer's with CNN and he's on the air right now.
Okay.
You are arresting him live on CNN. We told you before that we are all with CNN.
If you're just tuning in, you are watching our correspondent, Omar Jimenez, being arrested by state police in Minnesota. We're not sure why our correspondent is being arrested.
Hang on one second, Allison. Let's listen into what these officers are saying. That is an American television reporter, Omar Jimenez, being led away by police officers. He clearly identified himself as a reporter. He was respectfully explaining to the state police that our CNN team was there and moving away as they would request. And then for some reason, he was just taken in to police custody live on television. I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, Allison.
Yeah, I was wondering why he interrupted Allison, but that happened. Now he has since been released, but the question is, why did it happen in the first place? The police officers who did the arresting said that they were just following orders. Now, I'm not going to go on a lone diatribe about how many things have been done, how many war crimes, how many atrocities have been carried out just because someone says that they were following orders. Following orders is not an excuse for the violation of human rights. Never has been, never will be. But the fact of the matter is that this came shortly after Donald Trump tweeted what he tweeted this morning, what he tweeted last night, actually. And so I'm sorry. I know that the state police and the National Guard in there, the reserves, they are underneath the control of the governor, who is a Democrat, which I don't think is particularly salient at this point. But I do want to point that out. I do believe that Donald Trump has something to do with this, folks. I'm sorry. It's just that the arrest of a CNN journalist live on air shortly after Donald Trump said that the National Guard needed to get in that city. It's just too much of a coincidence for me not to believe that Donald Trump, who else would be stupid enough? Who else would be stupid enough to actually do something like that, which is probably very likely going to lead to a lawsuit? A very embarrassing lawsuit from CNN on the city, not to mention all of the bad press that they're going to get. Like, this completely undermines their validity, whatever little validity that they had left. And I'm sorry. Like, this is, don't think for 1 second. I'm not going to make a big deal out of this other than to say this very directly to you. Do not think for 1 second that this country cannot fall into pure authoritarianism, a pure dictatorship. Don't think, because there are people who are willing to carry out those type of draconian orders simply because they were ordered. Which makes me wonder, like, what were the police officers in Minneapolis, like the city police, what were they defending last night? You know, what were they rallying around when they evacuated their precinct? At that point, what are you doing? What are you defending? You're not protecting the people because the people are telling you it's time for you to go. So what are you rallying behind and retreating to? Well, that lets you, to me, that clearly stated, that was a clear statement that the police officers were never in the city to protect the people of the city or to serve the people of the city. Because once the people of the city said, hey, we've had it with you, what did they do? They locked down ranks. They hunkered down and then they retreated to another destination. Clearly, that tells us that they are not a part of the people. It doesn't matter that their income level suggests that they really are a part of the people. All that matters is that their ideology tells them that they're not. And that, my friends, is precisely the formula that's needed to execute a full authoritarian regime.
There is no way for us to justify how a police department can look at protesters with guns threatening the lives of lawmakers and not show up with riot gear and with aggression. But when they see young people who are screaming for justice because they just watched a community member get the life choked out of him, they act with extreme aggression. There is no way to justify that. The only explanation for that is to look at the kind of extreme injustices we have in our society. Who is deemed valuable and who isn't? Whose rights are protected and whose rights are not?
Whose rights are protected and whose are not. That was none other than Ilhan Omar, as she spoke this morning on MSNBC. This next voice is going to, well, here's Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne on the rapper, Lil Wayne on Fat Joe's Instagram show. And yeah, sure. Let's listen to him.
So you have a unique perspective. What do you think about what's going on right now with this cop on Big George stepping on his neck and all that?
I think when we see these situations, I think we also have to understand that we have to get very specific. We have to get so specific, and what I mean by that, we have to stop viewing it with such a broad view. Meaning, we have to stop placing the blame on the whole force and everybody of such a certain race, everybody with a badge, and we have to get into who that person is, and if we want to place the blame on anybody, it should be ourselves for not doing more than what we think we're doing. We leaving it at the reason why people always ask me, like, why you don't say this, why you don't do that, is because what else am I going to do after that? Some people put a tweet out and they think they did something. Some people wear a shirt, they think they did something. What you gonna do after that? Did you actually help the person? Did you actually help the family? Did you actually go out there and do something? So if I ain't about to do all that, then I ain't about to do nothing. I pray for you.
Yeah. Keep your prayers, bro. Pray for your liver. Pray all them drugs that you took. That did. Pray for your next album, bro. You know, full transparency, the Carter 3 one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. But this Lil Wayne, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about, because what you're doing is you're trying to you're making an excuse. You're making an excuse saying that if I'm not going to do everything, then I'm not going to do nothing. But yet you're using your platform to say that we should blame ourselves because we're not doing it enough. What are you doing? What are you doing? Because last time I checked, you don't even believe that racism is still real because white people come to your concerts. Remember that? I remember that well. See, this is the problem. Two things. One, celebrities, they are not equipped to be the spokespeople for anybody, particularly the black community. Second of all, celebrities will always be the last line of defense for the ruling elite because they know how much people are fans and how powerful celebrity idol worship is. That's my music. Stay tuned if you're a patron, patreon.com/BPD show. If you're not, you get the rest of the show, and we'll keep the party going. Everyone else, be safe out there. I'll see you Monday.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.